Guys, and welcome to my YouTube channel. And I want to say a special shout out to everyone who has subscribed thus far. I see you all and I'm so grateful. Thank you so much. It means a lot. I just started this barely 2 days ago and I have 20 subscribers already. So thank you so much for subscribing. It means so much to me. Thank you for liking, thank you for resharing, thank you for commenting. Thank you. In my last video, I spoke about how I applied to the UN over 60 plus times. I also put a question tag on my Instagram and then asked on TikTok as well. And asked on if you guys had questions on my UN application process, because I promised I was going to talk about the mistakes I made in my UN application journey. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about my UN application, not the successful one, but the near successful ones, process and all of that. And then I would answer the questions that I was asked. So let's get right into it. If you haven't subscribed, by the way, please subscribe and like and share, I guess, and turn on post notifications so you are notified every time that I post. So an application journey, I would say for me it started from the university during my undergrad days. Now I studied international relations, and because of that, like in class we talk about the UN, we talk about ECOWAS, we talk about all these organizations, and it just puts this thing in your head. You can almost envisage yourself like in the space, in the decision making process. You want to be part of the whole decision making process, and that was me. I remember with my friend Miriam Nampo, and I was sending out as many as I was applying. It was ridiculous because I was applying to roles I wasn't even qualified for. That's how bad it was. I remember I applied to D2 role, and if you don't know what that means, that's basically like a director role. So imagine an undergrad student applying for a director's role. Who does that? Me, apparently. So I applied to that, and then of course, I'm sure whenever they read my application, it would probably have given the hiring manager a good laugh, because my experiences at that time, wasn't even wholesome. I don't think I even had any work experience at the time I was applying. I started applying from my second year at the university, so I barely had like any experience. What I did do was include some of my volunteering experience, which helps a lot. So if you're in uni undergrad, you should look into getting some volunteer roles that you're interested in, volunteer groups you're interested in, activist groups you're interested in, leadership roles in school you can take on. It does help with your internships. It does help your internship applications. At that time, well, although they were kind of moving to Inspire, but it wasn't solid at that time. So you can have like organizations like UNHCR that were. So another thing I did was I would also advise is looking for agencies in the UN rather than applying to UNHQ directly. So rather than applying to United Nations headquarters in New York or Geneva or Vienna or wherever for an internship, you could look for like sub agencies like UNHCR, UNDP, UN Ops Operations, much OHCR, World Food Program, FAO, World Bank, World Bank is under hot cake. But then you could apply to these sub agencies because they have like less pressure points than applying to the main for the main internship on the Inspira page. Well, I'm not saying that to say you can't get an internship there. Aside the fact that there are less pressure points in these areas, some of the sub agencies pay stipends or remuneration, while the UNHQ internships do not pay. Like 99% of them. I'm yet to hear of any UNHQ internship that pays. UNDP internships do have stipends. UNCDF internships, some have stipends. UNHCR, some of them have. FAO, some of them have. World Bank has a stipend. IFC has a stipend. So you see, it's even more, affordable to apply less in these areas that have less pressure points. So that's what I would advise. But then again, doesn't mean you shouldn't apply to the ones you see on Inspira that catch your attention, the UN careers page. You should apply. I would encourage you to apply everywhere because you never know for roles that you're interested in. Now back to my internship story. So back in school, I did get one, but because of travel cost at that time to Malaysia, also it wasn't feasible, so I just let it go down. And then I had school, like I couldn't do up to 3 months at that time, and some other stuff came up, so I had to let it go at that time painfully. It was a UNHCR internship, painfully, sadly, and with tears. And fast forward to 2021, after the pandemic had been not fully lifted, but the pandemic restrictions, I beg your pardon, had been lifted for a bit. What I did was LinkedIn, yeah. I would say LinkedIn is gold. It's pure gold. Like, especially if you're a job seeker in any field, LinkedIn is gold. And I'll probably do a video on LinkedIn. If you're interested in that, you can just let me know in the comment section below. And if you also have comments about that, maybe questions you want to know about, like the whole LinkedIn stuff, you can ask me in the comment section and I will be sure to respond in a video or in the comment section. So I saw the job opening for a UNFPA internship. It was for 6 months, excuse me. It was for 6 months. It was paid. There was a stipend for it, and it was virtual. Now that sold me out completely. I saw it and I just went because it wasn't on the UN Inspira page to apply. It was on UNFPA, and I'm like, oh, this is a less pressure point. So I applied. My cover letter. Now, what I did do for my cover letter, I remember at a time I applied to OHCR. I think that was during COVID. Came back to me saying that the hiring manager said she or she couldn't find a place to place me because my cover letter was so generic. I wanted to cover like everything. I'm good in this, that, 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 that. I didn't let them know I worked on it. So when I was applying for UNFPA, I tailored my cover letter in a way that it reflected what I could do with the UNFPA, how the UNFPA and me, I made a bridge. And the bridge between me and the UNFPA was that our ideologies align, my experiences, my background, my goals align with where UNFPA was going to. So there was that bridge. So I made sure that I was the person they were looking for. Now the role was for DEI. Well, I'm not going to go into the specifics of the cover letter and ish because that will take a lot of time. If you're interested in that, you can let me know in the comment section, and I don't know, maybe perhaps I'll do a video and talk about the cover letter. I do not promise to share everything because some of my goals are in there, but I can share the formats of my cover letter. So yeah, so back to it. I applied. My cover letter was, I assure you, when I read this, I was like, wow, Abigail, like, and I submitted it. Now I got feedback from them probably 2 weeks. That waiting time is the hardest. It's like, it's so hard. I remember checking after a couple of days and I was like, why are you doing this to yourself? Probably like 2 days after, I was like, why are you doing this to yourself? And then I won't forget it. 2 weeks after I was checking my emails, I was refreshing. I just saw you've been longlisted, you've moved to the next stage. I was like, okay, this is not the time to start celebrating yet, but I was still so happy because the role I applied to was for a HR role, and I wasn't really I did have some experience in HR because of my NYC, my compulsory 1 year service. There was that, but I was just like, oh, okay, it's the long listing. It means that it's probably me and out of 4,500, maybe 4,000 other people or 3,000 plus people. But I was still so grateful to have, come that far. So, of course, I prayed. The next stage was for a video where we were to record a video, and there were some prompts that, some guidelines, not prompts, that were given to talk about ourselves, our background, our experiences, and why we chose the UNFPA. It was basically just a cover letter, honestly, but you just wanted to see how you could present it, I guess. I don't know. There wasn't, if I remember correctly, there wasn't any question that was like, oh, no, that wasn't. Oh, I think this time they just streamlined it to like the position you applied to, and so they would ask, like, why did you apply to this? Again, I think it's just the cover letter. So, yeah, I did that. The video, I also took my time, refurbished my cover letter. I wrote a script, kept editing it till I was satisfied with it, and then I made a video and submitted it. I was so confident after submitting that video because I gave them stories that, oh my god, true stories, but stories that aligned with the UNFPA in general, the UNFPA office I was applying to, and then my background, experiences, and ideology and goals fit the UNFPA's values and goals and objectives. So I was so solid sure about my video because everything was, I was like, yeah, I nailed everything. And I submitted the video when I was satisfied with everything. Then the waiting again. I kid you not, I was so anxious at this point. I was just like, oh my god, I hope there's no interview. I was hoping that would be the last stage. Then I was like, this probably can't be it. Because they did say a video interview, but it wasn't like an interview, it was just a submission.
A few moments.
3 weeks later, 3 long weeks later, I get an email saying that I was shortlisted. They were impressed by my video, and I was like, of course, you have to be, because I took my precious time. I was so sure about that video. I took my precious time with that baby, so of course. So I was so happy. I was shortlisted. Said we're impressed by my video. The intern was one that sent me the email, and she was like, she, the hiring manager, and the consultant on the in that office, in that particular role or space or area, whatever, and one other person, I think a staff, the program officer of the role, would be at the interview. That was where I panicked. It's like, that's like 4 people. It's a different thing if it's a one-on-one interview. Yeah, there's a bit of nerves, but it's calmer being that you're just trying to sell to one person. Or how do you convince 4 people to hire you for a role? That's basically what you're doing there. 4 people. You have to try to see, gauge, like, all the body signals to see if you're saying something you shouldn't be saying, or if you're saying something right. Like, and it was virtual. I'm thankful it was virtual because I can imagine like 4 people, and then phew, it takes a lot of nerves. So I was nervous about it, but I kept that aside. They did say an informal chat, but I was not going to take chances on it. An informal chat can just mean that we assume that you know everything there is to know about the UNFPA, and so that's what informal is to us. We assume you know everything about DEI. That was the particular role I was applying to, other HR, and that's why we are having this informal chat. So I was like, they could probably assume any of these things, and that's what informal means to them. I wasn't taking chances. I checked online and I saw informal chat means just to be sure. I saw informal chat means just to know how you fit. And I was like, oh, no, I'm not taking chances. So I went, redid my readings. I reached out to my friends that were in HR. I kid you not, this was like a whole village, like coming to support me. So you know what they say, dream work makes a teamwork. Teamwork makes a dream work, I beg your pardon. So I reached out to my friends in HR that were currently working in HR. I reached out to my friends I knew studied from university business. I reached out to friends that were just related in that space. I was going on CFI websites to learn about EDI or DEI, whatever you want to call it, and that's Corporate Finance Institute. At that point I was probably an uncertified EDI specialist because I read everything there was to know and read about EDI or DEI. EDI just means diversity, um, inclusion, and equality, um, or equity, depending on the organization and its objective. So, and I read on the UNFPA again. I read and read and read and read. I tried to reach out to former interns from LinkedIn, which is why again I say LinkedIn is, they were being because of the fact that they can't obviously share with me everything that the whole process, but they just gave me their own personal experience, how theirs went, and it helped me understand what I could possibly prepare for. So before the interview, I got my MiFi recharged, bought data bundles and everything. I'm going somewhere with this. On the interview day, I spoke to everyone, told my junior sister, I don't want to hear your noise around my room area. I locked the door, put my fan on just in case I get nervous and start sweating during the interview. The time came, I was on time, 5 minutes earlier, I was in already, and it was virtual. I think it was on Teams or Zoom, I can't remember which of them. And now it went smoothly, the whole introduction, we introduced ourselves. So I was like, great start, great start. And they were so impressed by my video. So I was like, okay, man, I was impressed as well too. Then he starts to talk about something, and my MiFi signal it starts acting funny. And I'm like, what's going on? I was so nervous. I was like, I had to keep a straight face, not to look panicked. And then I had to look like I could actually hear because it's a virtual internship or hybrid, depending on what you want to do. But they are assuming that you should have stable Wi-Fi connection. It's part of the requirement. So when my Wi-Fi was acting up, I couldn't, show that, oh, my Wi-Fi is acting like I have internet issues. Like that's a no-no. I was just like, oh my God. I didn't hear like half of the first thing he said, and then the other part where he finally asked the question. I knew I was so I tried to answer off the top of my head, but I could guess it's the wrong thing. I couldn't even look them like very well. I was just kind of the person that asked me the question because I was like, Abigail, you're saying rubbish. I did say it confidently, but I was saying rubbish. I nodded their heads, wrote down a few things, but I was like, oh my gosh. He asked me a second question, my network was stable, so I was like, okay, it's going well. Hmm. The specialist asked me a question, and my Wi-Fi went. Oh my God. At that time, I think afterwards I had to call out Airtel on my Instagram because I was so pissed. I was so pissed. I had everything in place and then network messed me up. Like so pissed. After like two or three questions when I couldn't hear, like it wasn't like constant, but sometimes to go off for a while and come back or to lag. And then at one point it became obvious because I had to ask them to repeat like twice. I just gave up at that time. I was just like, oh well, I've messed up. And in my mind I was like, you guys, I promise you I'm not like this. It's just because of my network. I promise you I'm smart. Like I would have answered your questions like very well if my network wasn't messing up. I wanted to let them know that, but of course there was no way to let them know that because you get one chance, yeah, and that's that's the time you have to make the impressions you're supposed to make. And yeah, so afterwards, I got 2 3 weeks later, I got an email saying I didn't make the internship, and I was like, yeah, if you guys had given me, I would have probably been a miracle because. And for a miracle, it had to be like a great miracle because I really messed up that interview, sadly. I was so pissed. I called out Airtel. But although it did boost my confidence because I now knew I was doing everything right. I knew that I had gotten the craft of this cover letter thing and this whole video thing. The interview, I was a bit shaky because kind of like traumatized me because every time I had like an interview out afterwards in Nigeria, it's like, oh, my network must not mess up my network. So that part always had me nervous and as confident as I should be in the interview. And Nigeria is a blessed place. And yeah, so that was the whole thing. That was just my experience in the whole the UNFPA application stuff. So let me know if you have any questions in the comments section and I'll be sure to respond. And thank you very much and see you next time. Bye.